Okay. Yeah. So yeah. Hi everyone. Welcome to WORQ fifth EQ series, whereby today we will actually be discussing talks fundraising during the pandemic. So let me know if I hope everyone can actually see us. If let's say you are having issue to see our screen and all, just let us know in the comment box. Yeah. Okay. So WORQ is actually a community-centric co-working space and a platform for business to network, to collaborate, and to prosper by working together. So what is this EQ series about? So it's actually our flagship event and also an effort to in many different ways by discussing on a variety of topics that help to establish and run the business. And before the pandemic, used to run this physical AMA session at work, but now we have moved on virtually. So here we are today. So as you can see, to all the attendees here, this is actually an AMA style. So all of you here today are also the moderators. So you'll see the Q&A section below. And if you have any questions to ask, feel free to put them in the Q&A box. All right, or if you see any similar questions that has been asked, you can actually upvote them so that it pushes the question to the top, and staff will be taking those questions from there. All right. So without further ado, let me pass back the floor to Stephanie, who is also the CEO and co-founder of WORQ, and Steph will be also our main moderator for today. So yeah, over to you, Steph. Okay.
Okay, can everybody hear me loud and clear? Okay, great. Thanks for coming, everybody, people on the floor, as well as our distinguished panel of speakers who are absolutely amazing in their own line of work. And today, the EQ series is on fundraising during the COVID-19 pandemic. And I see some familiar faces on the floor, meaning on the side chat room that is talking. I just want a quick shout out to them, Kevin, Tay, and of course some people, Sultanor, Daryl Wong. Thank you all for coming. We are very excited to have you here. And what we want to talk about is how you can fundraise during the COVID-19 pandemic and get opinions from Shahril, who is the Hive Southeast Asia managing partner and also used to be Khazanah Americas Inc. head, and Hamzah from RHL Ventures. He's the managing partner and co-founder over there, an amazing VC. We've all heard of it. They are very famous here in Malaysia. And of course, Wai Hong, who is the chieftain and co-founder of StoreHub. So today, if we can get a bit of information from them on how to raise funds during COVID-19, it would be wonderful. But before we start, I would like to bring out the message. A lot of people asked me before this meeting of whether it can be done, how hard it is, and should they give up hope? And my message is you absolutely should not, because it's absolutely possible, at least from my point of view. And Wai Hong's raised, WORQ itself has raised as well in the middle of the COVID pandemic. And it's harder, of course, and the due diligence is a lot more stringent. The numbers are very well-rounded because we have to actually, usually it's one lead investor doing the due diligence for us. Every investor wants to do due diligence during that time. So they are all asking different questions. So it's very well-rounded. The checks are more stringent and more well-rounded. And you really have to defend yourself. For us on profitability, we are there. And so we have to keep showing a lot of things there. So it is harder, but my message to everyone, to those people who talked to me before this, is that you shouldn't give up hope. It has been done. And I think absolutely you can do it. So maybe we hear from the panelists and let us know what's going on their side of things. And we start off by an introduction with them. Perhaps we start with our local VC that everybody know and love, Hamzah from RHL Ventures.
Yep. Hi, everyone. Good morning, and thank you, WORQ and the team at WORQ for organizing this. And it's great to be on a panel with some of the most esteemed funds and companies in Malaysia, with Wai Hong, with Shahril. So I'm glad to have this discussion. I founded the firm together with my co-founder, Rachel, back in 2016. Prior to this, worked in Goldman in Singapore and with Hong Leong's family office in Hong Kong. I invested in a variety of unicorns such as Spotify, Uber, Impossible, and then came back then to set up a fund together with my business partners. We are now working on our latest fund, the Hibiscus Fund, which is a co-GP with KB Financial Group, which is one of the largest banks over in Korea, and they want to invest a lot more in Malaysia, and then also partnering with Penjana Capital, which is the kind of the fund of funds of the Ministry of Finance. So we've invested in close to 30 companies across the whole of Southeast Asia, across numerous sectors. For example, we invest in Alami, this for the region's first Sharia digital bank, where we co-invested with East Ventures and Kona. We invested in one of the Malaysian champions called Health Metrics, the leading online-based third-party administrator of healthcare claims, where we brought in Japanese investors. Recently closed an investment in G Life Technologies, which is a seed-to-table startup focusing on distributing fruits and fresh vegetables to the HoReCa industry, where we co-invested with Heliconia. So been very active over the past year. We've kind of closed about 7 or 8 deals so far. Kind of looking at as well to just look at more startups, look at more companies to invest, and just happy to help whoever in the ecosystem.
Okay, great. Thanks for that, Hamzah. You know, a lot of successes over there, and don't forget how much they're helping our beloved country, Malaysia, by bringing all this in. And we really want to take some time to feel grateful for enriching the ecosystem there for us. Without people like that, you know, a lot of the startups will not have been started. A lot of things wouldn't have happened. So we definitely want to be very grateful for that. Yeah. Can we move on to Shahril? He sits in San Francisco, an old friend of mine. Tell a little story later on how we met. But for now, Shahril, can you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thank you, Stephanie, and I'd like to thank WORQ for organizing this event, and my fellow panelists, Wai Hong and Hamzah, for joining. My name is Shahril. I'm one of the managing partners for Hive Southeast Asia. Hive Southeast Asia is a global venture studio and venture capital firm. We're headquartered here in Palo Alto, and the Hive Southeast Asia is partnered with Penjana Capital and to build up the venture ecosystem in Malaysia and Southeast Asia. The Hive Southeast Asia is the newest member of this of the Hive family. We have funds in the US is on the 4th fund. We have a fund in Brazil, a fund in India, and a new one coming up in Saudi Arabia. As Stephanie mentioned, I was former head for Khazanah Americas, and you know, through the years, really got to know Hive really well. They have deep domain expertise and was a great partner for our fund in the US. We focus primarily on enterprise software, but in Southeast Asia, we are sector agnostic, early stage investor, seed and pre-A. And the other part that differentiates us, we focus a lot on co-creation, which is actually the process of creating companies internally with talented individuals, corporate partners, or internally through domain expertise with our advisors. So we do the co-creation part, and the other part is we're an early stage investor. And yeah, happy to help the ecosystem and connect with young startups.
I'd just like to add a bit of color on Shahril, and you know, I've been to his previous office and I've seen his team, and you know, the personal side of things is Shahril's a great boss. He runs his team really well. He knows what he's doing, and that color is something that I would like to add on how you, from the inside, you run something. You set it up, right? So you know how to set something up, and I just think that that's going to help a lot of company when you invest in them, right, Shahril?
Yeah, I think the team is really, really important. Maybe just a touch on, we believe in diversity. So our team, even in Hive Southeast Asia, we're focused on a very diverse team of, especially in the male-female ratio. I think it's really important, gender diversity.
Yeah, absolutely. Diversity brings a lot of ideas as well. It's not just an idealistic thing, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, great. So Wai Hong, not a stranger to any of us. He's the chieftain and co-founder of StoreHub. Wai Hong, can you tell us a bit about yourself for those of us who don't already know you?
Thanks, Stephanie. Thanks, Hamzah, Shahril. It's great to be here together with everyone to just have a good chat and share experiences if that might be helpful. My name is Wai Hong, chieftain, co-founder at StoreHub. We've been running this outfit for almost 8 years now, and basically we started out very humbly as a simple iPad point of sale for retailers and restaurants here in Malaysia, and but we've since grown and expanded to serve over 13,000 stores across the region, and with a entire platform or an ecosystem of products and services that's gone beyond the point of sale. I think today we call ourselves like more of a merchant success platform, and we also have a consumer platform to support the merchants in their efforts to reach and engage with their customers. So today we have, you might be familiar with Beep as a platform as well. I know I've spoken to many people who have ordered from Beep in the last year and a half. I think one of the more interesting things that happened for us in the last, since the pandemic started, was launching this consumer platform and using it to support merchants when in a time when a lot of the larger platforms are more interested in their own bottom line. So I think it's been a really interesting time for us. Would love to be able to share more about that, and as well as our fundraising journey is definitely not been an easy one for us. I think it's always very easy to look at the startups who have raised money and say, oh yeah, those guys have raised, it's been an easy journey. But I think for the overwhelming majority of us here in Malaysia, it's not an easy journey to do so. I think there will be a small handful, probably less than a number of fingers on one hand, of entrepreneurs here in Malaysia that I can say who have had an easy time.
Right. If it's not easy, it's no fun, right?
Easy is always better.
Easy is better. Okay. Yeah, so I like to add some personal touches on your introduction as well. Wai Hong is someone that a lot of people know, but also on our end, founder, my co-founder Andrew, he's a very technical guy, and he loves Wai Hong. So I always love talking to Wai Hong because he's so on the ball. He's very technical, and I think they gel in some way about the technical mindset and all that. So I just want to put that out there. It's hard to know these things until you sort of talk to them. And Wai Hong, we've known each other for a few years there. So I just want to put that out there for everybody to get to know you a little bit on screen right there. Sure. Okay. So yeah, thanks all for being here. I'll just have a quick one. You guys done your introduction. WORQ is here to help everybody in this room, a chat room, as well as in the wider ecosystem to prosper by working together, right? So hopefully people will work together with you guys as well, and you will work with them and everyone else around the ecosystem to build a better businesses for themselves. As well as if you're not even willing to build your own business, it's okay. If you're working, also people can help each other because we all have different experiences. And why relearn everything? Just tap onto each other and just produce something from there. So hopefully that can be the light of how we move forward with today's talk, and just leverage off each other and ask your questions. And after this, get in touch with each other to collaborate, right? So now the whole point is to get to know each other more so that they can get in touch with you to help you, and vice versa. Maybe I will start off with some questions from our side. In terms of the fundraising, let's just say in general, not even in COVID, can somebody just share the process for it? Maybe for newbies and stuff like that. What are the requirements or prerequisites? How long does it usually take? And then for the pandemic, how has it changed? Is anybody want to volunteer for it, or should I call out a name?
I'd love to hear Wai Hong's perspective, because he raised during the pandemic, and then we probably have the other side of the coin, Hamzah and I. So, why don't we start there? I don't know. I'm
Yeah,
game
I'll
either way.
start. I'll start. No worries, Shahril.
Okay.
Thanks for volunteering me. I think raising in Southeast Asia, I think I alluded to it earlier before, as a Malaysian company, it's always rough. I think if you're an Indonesian company, it's always 10 times easier because you're Indonesia. And I think in the last 7 years, we've always seen our Indonesian counterparts being able to raise off large markets much easier. And that's just kind of like it's no rocket science. They're basically VCs are looking for an outsized return on their investments, and so a large market is a really critical part of that puzzle, right? So I think that's always been the case. So here in Malaysia, we've always seen fundraising rounds stretch from 6 to 12 months. That's essentially what we've seen. We've been quite lucky in the sense that our shortest was 3 months, but I think we've not been, we've also been victim to the 9-month cycle of fundraising, and that's basically from the first time. I would say it's roughly about the time you get a term sheet to actually getting money in the bank. That's roughly how long we've seen people be able to get like a close. And that was pre-pandemic, right? And I think pre-pandemic, what we've always seen was that there was a lot of hype about trends that typically excites or doesn't excite VCs more or less. So if you were part of a trendy season or kind of like industry, then it's a lot easier to get the money. If there are comparables, that companies who have done really well in the same space in a different ecosystem, those are the things that make it really easier to actually close rounds. And we've observed that because we were never in any of those sexy spaces, right? And you remember, like 8-9 years ago, it was e-commerce, consumer platforms, and then there was mobility, and then all of that trend started to die off. And then finally we caught the tail end just pre-COVID, where SaaS became sexy again, and B2B became more sexy again, because profitability became more interesting for VCs when they started seeing all these consumer-facing platforms die out in various forms. So I think what's really been challenging is to be able to see how do you kind of like tap into all of that. One of the more interesting things, I guess, about COVID when it struck was that the behaviors on the VC fund and the investors front don't change too much. It's still following this kind of similar principle here, is that what is the new trend, right? What is the thing that does well in the middle of a pandemic? And I think that shifting over the last decade kind of movement from let's grow at all costs towards profitability, that solidified in the middle of COVID. Like suddenly profitability became super important. Sustainability became an important word that was thrown around. I think also because there was a concern around, okay, if we put money here, we're able to raise next, all the uncertainty around the future of the world, all of those things make it a little bit more interesting, I guess, in the way that VCs or investors invest into the ecosystem. There is definitely not a lack of money. I know many investors who raise outsized, $200 million, $100 million, $300 million. There's plenty of capital still left in the world, if not more, to flow into startups, to flow into the ecosystem. But the shift in mindset, I think, has changed. We actually closed our middle of COVID round relatively quickly, but I would say that's not necessarily a true reflection of the industry or the space. I mean, we've been in this, in the business for many years. We've done multiple rounds. We've got good VCs. So those things really help us to close the round within 2 or 3 months. But I think the truth is that for many of my other friends, I would say, if you are in that right space, and many of them were. So I think the good news is in the middle of COVID, suddenly a lot of startups became super relevant. And when they were super relevant, it became super easy to close deals. But on the flip side, there were actually a lot of startups who weren't relevant, and those guys could not close at all. So I think it's almost all or nothing kind of like situation in the middle of COVID. In the past, you could probably, I was going to use a harsh word, but I'll say you would probably trick a few investors into giving you some small money pre-COVID, because who could predict the future? But I think in the middle of COVID, everyone is a lot more conservative, so that doesn't happen as much. I think you're either in the right space or you're not in the right space. Therefore, you either get money or don't get money. Anyways, that's my spiel. That's my take.
Okay, I'd like to hear from Hamzah. Hamzah, I don't want to say dole out money, but you do. And when you give it out, right? Like, what do you look for? And then, just whatever Wai Hong has said just now, right? Like, how has it changed, right? From your point of view, how do you change your ways of doling out money now? Has it changed, or the fundamentals are still there? And please let us know.
So I'll answer the question from two angles, right? So I mean, yes, everyone looks at VCs as like we are rolling out money all the time or whatever. But actually, you got to think on the flip side, right? We also have to fundraise, and we also have to talk to like probably similar pool of investors, or at least slightly different in terms of raising our pool of like commingled capital, right? So in essence, if a market is bad, people are struggling and businesses are struggling, obviously businessmen will probably be struggling too, and there are our corporates will be struggling, and our investor base would kind of be struggling as well. So I think all in all, like, I mean, COVID does bring opportunities from a technology perspective, but at the same time, if our own clients are suffering, I mean, it's tougher to, the baseline, it'll be tougher to raise money anyhow, right? So I think that's one point I just want to put out there. I think on number two, in terms of opportunities that I see within this COVID, right? So I think in terms of, you can can be lucky in a sense where you're in a space where COVID is just gives you a strong tailwind. Like our company's Signature Markets has done really well in this market because everyone's at home, everyone's working from home, and they snack a lot, right? So in essence, Edwin didn't have to do much. He's just like, oh, suddenly my numbers have doubled this month when we locked down. Just because we locked down and then numbers grow because there's much more demand for people eating from home, right? So I think we are realistic of that. And we've also had portfolio companies, for example, like Rage Coffee, which scaled up extremely quickly during pre-COVID, and then when COVID hit, you're kind of like saddled with leases, you're saddled with like staff, and which you can't operate at full capacity for sustained periods of time. So it's a tough environment to operate, and there's honestly, like, sometimes you're just unlucky and something unlucky, and it's just how you pivot from that and move forward, right? So in terms of where we see opportunities lie moving forward, we do see that the trends will continue. I mean, COVID will still stay for the next few years. So we've invested in teams that we feel will benefit from it. Obviously, pricing is expensive. I have to say, like, looking at companies now, if you're benefiting from COVID, you're probably not cheap, and you have to be able to pay up for it. And I think in this case, investors are more price takers these days compared to before, because there's just a lot more capital flowing through the ecosystem for companies that are benefiting from COVID. And at the same time, like, I think there's also a bigger importance of value add and strategic value of how you can add value to a company. So we're working closely with Penjana and the MOF ecosystem in terms of empowering SMEs, helping SMEs grow. There's also been a focus on agriculture. So working on these teams where we can actually help our portfolio companies supercharge growth. And I think that's important in this case where rounds are becoming more frequent. It's no longer like one round can last you 2 years. Everyone wants you to raise like every year and just grow, right? So I think that's important to just think about.
Okay, it's great that you are helping SMEs over there. That's our market as well on the retail co-working side. And it's a big market, and Malaysia has a big SME market, and they bring a lot of good to the economy as well. Shahril, can you add your point of view to that from your days at Khazanah as well as now?
Fundraising during the COVID time, I think has changed a little bit. I think one of the interesting things is, as both Wai Hong and Hamzah said, that the companies which are riding, I wouldn't say riding the tailwinds, but who are adept at providing services to what consumers and businesses need during this pandemic era are doing very well. And then those which have sometimes a more consumer focus or a more physical focus are not doing as well. And I think there's a lot of money on the sidelines to invest. And I think during actually this COVID pandemic, I think one of the things I'll share, it's actually, I think venture firms have become more efficient. We used to do a lot of physical meetings, which took a lot of time and coordination. And now it just feels like we're doing one meeting after another every day, and the time and distance doesn't matter as much. So I think the process, strangely enough, has become more efficient. But also, I think the companies that don't quite fit the as Wai Hong said, trendy themes, or some of the themes that are playing out because of the pandemic, are finding it tougher to raise. And so I've seen, some firms pivoting slightly to take advantage of, or to align themselves with their current reality. So I think, for startups trying to raise money, my impression is that actually they have faster access to venture. Because in the past, it would take, a direct connection, someone introducing, and the process takes weeks. Here, venture firms are actively out at accelerators, incubators, pitch sessions, taking a lot of inbound emails, and so on and so forth, and taking referrals, and being able to organize a meeting usually fairly quickly, within a week or 2 weeks, sometimes even faster. So I think the process is efficient on both sides, and so I think it hasn't hurt, but the time to raise has stretched a little bit sometimes for certain firms. I think I was thinking about that question earlier, and I think I've been thinking 6 months is probably the time a startup should plan for it. And if a firm is very excited in working with you, they could close in as short as 3 to 4, but there's always work on the legal end and getting the documents signed. So that always takes time.
Yeah, okay. So I definitely understand that. And there's a bit of like interesting how it's changed to more online. And you can just directly reach out to people, maybe even on LinkedIn or something like that.
Yeah. And if I can add, Stephanie, that it's become like a sieve. Companies that are able to operate or provide services in the new pandemic, in the new normal, are able to raise larger and larger rounds very, very quickly. Companies that don't quite make that filter because their business model doesn't work under pandemic conditions are finding it harder and harder. And it's as an entrepreneur, I would probably urge you to rethink about, when is the pandemic ending? How would you manage your business in such environments, so on and so forth.
Yeah, I think it's like what they say, wartime is like when you separate the winners from those who are less sustainable, right? Because, just maybe by virtue of the fact that a lot of the difficult times shift, just separate the shaft, then the clear winner is shown a lot more obviously during tough times. Yeah. So okay, can I just ask, what are the companies that or the traits that you look out for in a company that you want to invest, or how do you go about finding out or doing due diligence and then making that choice, right? Maybe from a local end. Or, well, it's not just local. Hamzah also invests all over, but maybe from the point of view of here, Malaysia outwards, how do you figure it out?
Yeah. I think in terms of investing trends now, I think I would say that there's a bit of differentiation in terms of stages of companies when you review things, right? So if you invest in, let's say, A or pre-series A, we'll look at slightly different things to when we invest in a B, right? Because that's where their different stages are. I would say in general, we're investing a bit earlier, then there's a lot more emphasis on the founder. So I would say like 50-60% analysis is onto the founder, his subject matter expertise, his background, his contacts, and so on. So I would say that's because at an early stage, there's not much numbers to go around, and there's not much basis other than obviously backing the founder and his way to aggressively grow. I think on point 2 is, I think the market is competitive now. So when it gets to a B stage, when it gets to a larger check, you're talking about, let's say, a 20-30 million check, I think that's a lot more focus will be on financial and legal due diligence, finding out if there's a profitability angle to it, finding out whether the goals of profitability that you put out in your previous rounds match what you're saying in this round. At the same time, also the go-to-market strategy in terms of regional expansion is important. So when we work with our Korean partners, like the Koreans are always looking to guys who can go regional, right? So a single country play is not as attractive anymore. You see like the listings that are going on in the US, like so Grab, overseas investors like the regional story. And I think it's the same for North Asian investors. So I would say that when you're B and above, everyone's just looking more to just, not only is like in terms of top line revenues, in terms of profits, how are you moving towards profitability, when are you hitting break even, how do you grow and be profitable at the same time, right? So I think those factors come a bit more when it comes to later stage companies.
Okay. Perhaps Shahril, you can
also on the earlier stage, it's even it's, you know, there's less numbers to go by, but you know, we like looking for growth numbers. A product market fit is already sort of there. You know, the founding team, we evaluate quite a lot on to see, you know, both their track record and their team composition. I think that's very key. And then, you know, we also look at the theme they fit in. So some of the themes that we're interested in right now is future of work. And then on the enterprise side, it's digitization, especially for the Southeast Asian market, and how these companies will use data. And then one of the metrics we use when we look at a company is that, you know, is the market they're attempting to penetrate or disrupt, is it large? And again, is it portable across different countries? Is the time now? For example, if the project or the company they're building, you know, will come to maturity maybe in 5-10 years, it may not be for the Hive. And then finally, is it the right team? I think, can this team execute against what they are building? And yeah, and then, you know, finally, you know, I think one of the things like to look at on the founding team is why they're doing it. I think that's a very important question for us, you know, the why, how, what. But the why is really important. What's the founding story? Why are they interested in solving this particular problem?
I see. Okay. And what about you, Wai Hong? What are the things that make your investors really like fall in love with your company?
I think it's, you know, and it's kind of funny because Shahril alluded to the fact that these days you don't do in-person meetings, right? But I remember some of our earliest investors. I remember Vertex. You know, we actually did a video call with them. First time I got introduced to Vertex, and I completely flopped the video meeting, and the investor was not interested at all based off that call. I think many moons later, the partner reached out and wanted to meet, and in the meeting he was like, "Wow, you're really impressive." And in fact, I think in convincing his IC, he was like, "You know, you need to meet the founder. On paper, they may not look like, you know, this company is really interesting, but the founder is really like, you know, you got to meet him. And so I think it's a little bit like that in the early stages. It's always about how much the particular investor likes the founder, right? And for whatever reason, you know, whether or not their drive, you know, the why, it stands out from the way that they talk, they describe the details of the business. I think all of those things are, and I'm a very details person. I think you pointed out you used the word technical, right? And basically what that meant is that I remember, I'm not sure you remember the story why your partner Andrew said that, Steph.
I do.
It was when I first turned up. I think it was first turn up. I can't remember. When I first walked to work, and I was so frustrated with the sign-in process because the technology, the system, and the process that was used I was like, oh my God, it's so frustrating. Why can't you? And it's like, oh, there's these things you have to do. You have to press enter here, you do press enter there. So and then I went up to Andrew after that. I was like, and I described in entire detail what was the problem, exactly how he can improve it, what systems he can use, and we had a long, good conversation about it. And I think for me, that was me, right? Like I'm that kind of person. I see problem, I want to solve problem. One of my biggest contributions to StoreHub as a company is that I'm like one of the best problem solver. If you have a really difficult problem that you can't solve, you come to Wai Hong, right? That's the kind of one of the value adds I bring to the company. And so I think that translates a little bit to what investors are kind of looking for. I think investors are looking for more substance these days as opposed to fluff. I think gone are the days where entrepreneurs could fluff their way into raising large amounts of capital. I think substance is key. Of course, you still need a little bit of flair. You can't lead companies purely from from the back of the office and coding anymore. I think it's important to be able to have the ability to connect with people and all that stuff. So I think those are some of the qualities I'm seeing. A lot more substance is more critical these days, especially when we're solving problems for one of the most difficult times humanity has ever kind of encountered, right? I think this is, if anything, you know, the most important time for us to demonstrate with whatever ability we've been given, whatever abilities we've taken up, to partner with investors to solve these really difficult problems. I think for us, for example, like, you know, when at the start of the pandemic, we saw thousands of restaurants and retailers close, and that, you know, as a foodie myself, you know, all Malaysian foodies, like we really struggle when we see these restaurants close down, and like, oh my God, I'll never be able to eat that again. And so that close to heart problem, you know, like how do we translate that into the work that we do?
Okay. So yeah, I think, you know, in terms of sustainability, you know, and having substance, you know, it's like Warren Buffett always says, right? When times are good, everybody makes money. It's when, you know, the tide goes out that you see, I guess the word he used was who's not wearing pants or something like that. And I think we are always reminded of that by our parents who are business people, or the older generation, or, you know, a value investor that is like, you know, it's a long game, right? And it's when the time will come, and if you don't think, if it's just very trendy, then maybe, you know, it's not going to last too long. And they always kind of drum it into our heads. I know I was being drummed in the head of this because I come from a family of business, but sometimes you don't listen until you've been through some recessions, right? It is really coming through to our younger generations who's used to good times, but then now bad times have come, and then what does that mean, right? So from the get-go, how should you build your business, and whether it should be profitable from day one? Andrew always talks to me about how it has to be. We have our conversations there because I'm from San Francisco. It's always growth and all that, and then that's the kind of like balance of, you know, what you have to achieve, right? So I just want to ask you guys, in terms of growth and profitability, what is your view on that? Maybe Shahril, you can give us a point of view there.
So I think, you know, it's a slider, right? On one hand, you can use money for growth and sacrifice profitability for or delay profitability to gain early growth. And then on the other hand, you can sometimes seek profitability faster, but work in a very small market and then sacrifice your growth. So it's a slider, I think. So there's no clear answer, I think. But in San Francisco, I think, you know, we are still believing in growth and attempting to get large markets and delaying that profitability. I know the trend in Asia is to seek profitability faster, but it's a slider. I think given current situation, and also to touch upon what Hamzah said, that, you know, funds and investors are also stressed through this because their core businesses may be stressed. High net worth people have other opportunities during this pandemic, institutions and so on and so forth shift their focus. So I think in this current situation, it's probably better to have a shorter path to profitability, mainly because your investors may not be able to keep funding your growth for many, many rounds. So, you know, I think that's my thought. And then maybe, and sorry, just one other thing, you know, since we touched on the pandemic, it's interesting. It's a black swan event. I mean, who would have thought this would have happened, right? But, you know, I remember looking at one of the Bill Gates videos, and he said the one thing he was worried about early on was a pandemic before it happened. He put a probability of a pandemic happening in his lifetime at a certain percent, and lo and behold, it happened. So, you know, I think with, you know, things like climate change, stress on food, work and all this, you know, I think these black swan events and extreme weather and pandemics will keep increasing. So I think businesses have to build resiliency. So my current thinking is slider shifts a little bit more to the profitability.
Okay. Hamzah, you have a point of view on that?
Okay, I think obviously I'm personally a fan of like a move towards more profitability, and I think that's where fundamentally business should go towards. But I'm also cognizant that you have companies burning like billions of dollars capital and losing billions of dollars. They're still getting like very good valuations, right? So I think that the key part here is, I mean, how strong the founder or the founding team can raise capital if you want to kind of supercharge growth or spend on growth, right? So you can spend on growth and then raise more money, then I think you'll be fine, and you get more dilution, you have less stock, but you have a bigger company to work with. But if you're cognizant that you can't do that, then I think you've got to find a middle ground where you're growing and then finding a profitable path. But nowadays, given that investors are doing, I mean, there's just so many rounds, right? There's pre-A, A plus, pre-B, B plus, B plus. So I mean, like, in the end, it just depends on what you, right? The round is just a name. It's just how much money you can actually raise, because and the amount you can raise depends. But it's also a validation of the value of your business, right? And if there's a good business proposition, then people want to back it. And also if there's the right partners on board, also people want to back it over the long term. But in the end, every investor has like a 5 to 7 year horizon, right? So we all got to be cognizant that, hey, you got to find an exit within that time. And I think everyone is working towards. So I think Malaysia now with, I think the latest stage guys getting a bit more traction now with Casa, with Aerodyne, with StoreHub doing well too. I think I hope that the velocity of exits continue, because when there's exits, so there's money recycling to the capital.
That's right. Yeah. And it sounds like there's two ways to think about it. One where you grow very big and then you have enough attention and resources to figure out how to make it profitable, or how to make the model work at a point, or maybe you'll figure it out at the beginning, and if your bucket is not leaking any water, it can just become bigger and bigger, and that's in itself is growth, right? Because you're not leaking, and whatever comes inside will just keep making things balloon. So both are good models, right? If the one that grows very big can figure something out, certainly it's been done with the unicorns, Facebook and all that. But there's also the kind that, like, it's just not, I mean, I think in many ways, Amazon is kind of like that as well. And they don't raise as much as other people, and they start in one country as well. And then, they go from there. Okay, we have a question from the floor. And if it's okay, I would like to ask, it's a bit long, but I think we should get through it because it's quite something that people go through. I think not just Daryl who's going through it. He wants to know, what is the main point we need to prepare before we go for fundraising? In his case, he tried pitching, MDEC and Cradle, all happening before the pandemic. And previously, when he came up with the idea, he tried to raise funds, and they were told that they had to build a platform. After 9 months, they did the platform, and with the majority function users' needs in the platform. And they try again to request fundraising to use for marketing promotions, but they got rejected. And the reason is that they want the funds want to get they wanted them to get customers by themselves to show that the concept is workable and get more traction. So he's confused. How does fundraising works? Once they get customers to start using the platform, meaning I do not need to go for fundraising. Do you mind I ask, what is the main point of focus for VC or investors' needs actually? So I had tried a few times in different idea concepts, and the outcome is the same. So I think what he's trying to say is that he's confused on how it works. Once he gets the customers to start using the platform, is that when he can raise the funds? Like, how does that work?
I'll take this. I've spoken to many startups about this, especially in Malaysia. And I think one of the challenges is that we don't necessarily think about fundraising as a journey. We often think of it as an event. And the truth is that when it comes to startups, we're all on various stages as well, right? We've got an early stage of the startup, the ideation stage, we've got the early traction stage, we've got the times of traction stage. And then every single stage of the startup, if you're looking to raise capital, you need to understand the people that you're raising capital from. And if you're approaching a VC, for example, when you just have an idea and you have no connection with the VC, you have no prior experience running startups, the VC is going to look at you and say, look, you're not the right stage for me. You need to demonstrate that you have something that's workable here before they can actually progress you. You have to understand that likely at the stage that you've just described, you have to approach, either angel investors or high net worth individuals to give you the initial seed money. For most of us, it was the 3 Fs: friends, family, and fools. So usually it's that's the stage where you kind of approach people for the idea, right? And so when you say you're confused, like, why do I go to VCs and they tell me to bugger off and come back with a finished product which has customers ready, then why do I need VC money? Well, the truth is that VCs only invest when you have product market fit, right? And what that means is that you've actually demonstrated that your idea appeals and creates value for customers, and that value that you created has the potential to scale, and you've demonstrated some of that. VCs can only invest once that's been demonstrated. Of course, there are exceptions, right? There are VCs who have invested into founders with just an idea, but oftentimes it's because those founders are either outstanding themselves or outstanding at selling or outstanding at conning, right? So one of the above is essentially why you see those exceptions. But for the majority of the cases, VCs only invest in startups that have demonstrated their product market fit and that traction. Again, like I said, it's different stages. There are seed stage VCs who are more willing to believe in ideas, and then there are more later stage VCs who invest in more proven companies. So you need to recognize what stage of your startup journey you're at and approach the right kind of investors. It's okay to approach many investors. You will learn that some of them are not a right fit, but don't take it personally. It's not because you shouldn't confuse you that investor says, I'm not ready, you're not ready for us to invest in. It should just be a note in your Excel sheet that basically says, or your Google Sheets, that basically says this investor will only invest at that stage, right? That's essentially how you should think about fundraising. It's not like, all investors want this. And no, it's not true. All investors are unique individuals that you need to understand the way they operate, what they're looking for, how they invest before you actually approach them.
Yeah, and
right.
maybe
go on, Shahril.
I think that's great advice, Vaihong. So yeah, there is the investors. If you're at an early stage, I think one of the things you should also attempt is to meet friendly investors, either friends or family or close connections, and test out your idea. I think you need to, it's a process of refining both your idea and your pitch, and especially if you don't have a product yet or any traction in the market. I think you have to test it out, and it's a process of refinement, and every iteration just gets it closer and closer. So I think that I'd like just to add to that. And then through the process, you'll meet some investors, as Vaihong said, are later stage and may not be interested at this time. Some are earlier stage and would be interested. So you have to also know your investor base. If you want to catch a certain kind of fish, you have to go to the right river, so to speak. So you have to know who you're talking to.
I'm going to throw a spanner in the works here, Shahril. I don't think looking for friendly investors is always the best advice. I think you sometimes need to find a Simon Cowell of investors, because there are very few of those guys, right? Most investors will never tell you, if you ask them for feedback, like, why aren't you investing in me? They will never tell you the real reason. I'm telling you that right now. I mean, in front of these two investors here, the reason why they don't tell you the real reason is because they don't know whether you're going to succeed or not, right? They don't know, 6 months later, 12 months later, this guy is going to become the next, Mark Zuckerberg. So I don't want to burn this bridge. I just want to be nice to him, right? But the truth is, niceness doesn't lead you to a successful product. What you need is Simon Cowell-like criticism, Simon Cowell-like feedback that basically says, dude, that sucks big time. You need to get rid of that. That's not going to work. You have a problem with this and this and this about yourself and the lack of your ability here and here and here. That is the kind of feedback you need to look for as much as possible. Yeah. Very few investors will give that to you.
Yeah, I think meeting friendly. Hopefully, I guess what I was shooting for, meeting friendly parties will give you that that closeness to get that kind of honest feedback, and your ability to listen. Sometimes I think entrepreneurs, they don't want to hear the harsh words, but when you have a friendly investor or a friendly ear, you can test the idea out. They can say it in a way that might be receptive, so that you can refine your idea. I mean, having said that, maybe just one thing we've instituted doing is, our thank you letters actually now have a detailed reasoning why why this, but again, in a as much as possible, and points that might need to be improved, but we'll probably make a few mistakes and miss a Mark Zuckerberg.
Shahril, you're one of the nicer investors really. The difference is that if you get a rejection emails with just like one paragraph versus like 10 paragraphs, like know which ones are.
It's like I think it's like Hamzah says, right? Like just for Daryl here as well, when you are trying to raise funds, remember that the investors have their own investors. And maybe you're going to an investor who is perhaps not in the right industry or what you're doing, or you may not be the right company for that specific investor, that they are looking for certain things. And so, if you do your homework into, not that you didn't, but I'm just guessing here, like, not just any investor, like say, if you're in certain industries, you might want to target certain investing firms or VCs that have some different kinds of mandates or things that they're more familiar with and stuff like that. And then you're going to have a lot more targeted in terms of the people that can understand you, because at the end of the day, investors have their own customers and they have to fulfill that as well. And if you can see beyond that, right, and say, what does this investor need and is also looking for and can understand me, then you can, like raise funds, like do their job for them as well. And in your pitch, you understand. And also don't waste time with some other people who maybe think you're a great company, but it's just not in their mandate, right? So I think really all good points. Getting feedback is important. Whether it's like, very, very Simon Cowell or, Shahril, very enlightened, like, it's a win-win situation. I don't have to tarot you. I just tell you the truth in a way that you can swallow it. And then, because you can take that feedback, then you're going to be using it for your startup and stuff like that. So it's a right way to do things in different ways. Both are great. People should also just take difficult to swallow feedback. But I'd like to hear what Hamzah has to say on this as well. If a startup comes to you, what would be your, with this question, what would be your feedback?
No, I think to what Hong's point, I think it's a very fair point, because I think most VCs, when they look at a company, like, you don't know when the company will do well, right? So you always want to build a relationship over a long run, because even though you don't go, let's say, Series A, you may want to go look at them at Series B or vice versa or whatever, right? And also, and maybe in future rounds, your other friends within your network may actually go in, and there's a different strategic value to the proposition. So I think, as I said, this fundraising, there's no like real black and white guide to it. But I think in terms of, I'm a company looking to fundraise, and I see like decks like every week, right? I think in the end, you just have to be true to your values and then just work on the product. I mean, I think 99 out of 100 people will say no. But I think that 1 or 5% of people who say yes, I think those are the guys that you want to keep for the long run.
Right. Okay. Thanks for that. Can we just switch it up a little bit? I would like to ask, can you tell us, some of the best companies that you've invested in, or maybe those that you haven't, but you wish you had? Perhaps, Hamzah, you can let us know.
I mean, okay, I think there's been a lot of companies that I did not invest in that have done like very, very well, right? Like, I mean, like, I think, for example, there's 1 or 2 unicorns in Singapore, which we looked at like Series A, and that was like 4 years ago. And now they are unicorns, right? Obviously, I've gotten that wrong. And then obviously they've grown like probably like 30, 40 times since. But at the same time, like hindsight is 2020. And at the same time, like our team is tasked with making sure we look at every deal, right? So So if we look at every deal, there's probability wise, we'll say no to most of it. And then with a portfolio of, let's say, 30 companies, there's always guys we miss out. But I think in terms of who's doing well, Signature Market is doing very well, doing healthy snacks, wellness during COVID. That's one. Another success story is Health Metrics, Malaysian company again, third-party administrator healthcare claims, very steady business, servicing healthcare needs of corporates. That's doing well. A recent company we went in is Naluri. They saw a 3 times growth in revenue during the COVID time. And then they brought Sumitomo in as a partner to help grow in the recent cap table and fundraise. And then there's a big regional play with Singapore, Indonesia, the countries that are being hired at the moment. So just a lot of companies are actually doing well. I think it's just a matter of, obviously it's all well on paper and it's all up rounds, but one day I'll have to exit. And I think that will determine who's good and not good when the exits come about.
Exactly. Paper money is just the paper money, right? It's show you the real money and stuff. But that's a good thing that the investor is thinking about. I'm glad that Hamzah is thinking like that, because the real money is going to flow back into the economy and going to benefit some other startups. So I'm glad that's on your thoughts. Shahril, what about you? Any great hits or any great misses?
So, I think as all venture people, you have good hits and also, misses for a variety of reasons, timing or others. So maybe I'll wear 2 hats. So on the Hive hat, we typically create companies and create companies internally with our corporate partners or with talented entrepreneurs and others. And so on the Hive front, actually, we've created in the US, close to 30 companies and only an impairment ratio of 2. So only 2 companies have not done well out of the 30. So, it's a good model, but it's very narrow and in the enterprise space and very, very focused. As an investor, we've missed on some. I think cybersecurity is one, because it feels like a very hard space to get your mind around. But I think we've missed on some great cybersecurity companies that literally came knocking to our door. The other one I think we missed on the earlier side is I think is on the blockchain space. Because we started looking at blockchain in about 2015, 2014. And, I think it's moved very fast, faster than we expected as well. So I think those are some of the misses. And yeah, the wins, there have been some good wins, on some companies that have gone public and all that. But I can't quite speak about it because Khazanah is quite private about these actual exits. So but we've had some good public exits. I think Sieg Arena is one of them. So, but that wasn't my team, but yes.
Wow, that's some great hits over there. Shahril, I just want to follow up, right? You said that you help sort of companies, bigger companies, build internal companies. Do you actually maybe help them identify startups that the big corporates can buy and make them into internal companies?
Yeah, so it's interesting. So maybe I'll give one case example. One company that was built was called Foghorn. It's in the
I know this company.
It's in an edge intelligence space, but this was built at a time when everyone was moving to the cloud and AI was moving to the cloud, and everyone said the cloud could do everything. The Hive came up with this thought that the cloud is great for many things, but when you have to respond quickly or latency is an issue, either in safety, industrial control, process control, it has to be done at the edge and done quickly. So a company was built on this premise of moving intelligence from the cloud to the edge, which was contrary to what everyone else was doing. And this idea was then validated by a number of corporate partners. One of them was GE and a number of others. And GE said, this is a great idea. If you can build this, we will not only buy the product, but we will help you sell it. And then a number of other corporate partners also said the same thing. So that gave a strong validation to build the company. And so the Hive built the company internally, and then recruited a founding team, and equity for the founding team. And the founding team and the Hive become the founders of this company. And today, it's raised a significant amount of capital, and investors like Saudi Aramco are in their LS Group and a number of others, GE of course, and others. So that's the sort of venture building or venture studio model. So we always look for an opportunity that may not be addressed by the market, and then work with our partners to validate the idea. And so it goes through ideation, validation, and then building.
Right. Okay. So I like to think of it as, I say, like large companies should maybe commit suicide. And I say commit suicide don't mean commit suicide, but you should, right? Try to overtake yourselves with the
I think one of the issues with large companies trying to innovate is whatever innovation they try to do, they try to make it captive. Typically, they want to own it. But really, for this startup to be huge, it has to be bigger than them and address a market bigger than them. So I think that's always the tension in doing that.
That's the committing suicide by like not being afraid to take over yourself, right?
Yeah,
I think that's really relevant for big companies, and it's a great model that you have there. Shahril, maybe we can also, copy a little bit of what you're doing and then learn from you from that side of the world as well. Okay, I actually want to ask Wai Hong a question. Startups now in this COVID pandemic, they need to pivot and they need to think really hard about how they can, change the business model or at least improve it, and then really make themselves stronger from it. Can you give us some advice on that?
Yeah, so I guess I'll give the advice from the perspective of my experience with Beep. And I think, most people, Hamzah, we've had many conversations over the years, many investors, just the ecosystem as a whole, always thought of StoreHub as a merchant platform, right, with point of sale and extended. And so what was really interesting was that when we decided to launch Beep, it came out from two things. And I would say those two things are incredibly important to understand like how Beep evolved. And really was the first one being feeling the pain of the customers we were serving, and actually navigating like their thought process. So what I mean by that is that at the start of the first lockdown in Malaysia, we asked the question, right, like, well, what's going to happen as a result of this? And naturally, our thought process was that the restaurant would restaurants as at large would scramble to try to get on the food delivery platforms, right? Because they can't do dine-in, and then they would also at the same time realize that it's not going to happen anytime soon because the food delivery platforms are overwhelmed with applications. And then they will realize even after they get in at 35%, and if you give 100% of your sales away at 35% margins, you're going to just run out, you're just not going to run a sustainable business. So I think working through that pain and that thought process, and what happens next, they would try to do direct ordering. So like, take orders on WhatsApp, and that's going to be a really painful process. So just kind of walking through those stages, right? And understanding, this is a pain that's going to be really big. Everyone's going to feel this, right? So I think that's the first part of that pivot or the innovation, right? It's trying to feel that pain. I think the second part is forecasting the future. And I think for many startups, I remember at the time, I spoke to many other entrepreneurs who were my friends. They were all super unrealistically optimistic about how COVID would pan out. Everyone thought, I won't say everyone, a lot of people I spoke to at the time thought that it would be back to normal within 6 months. And this was in March 2020. Right? I'm not sure if you guys had like a similar experience as I did, but a lot of people are like, yeah, we'll be fine, vaccines will be out, things will go back normal, it's all small numbers, and it will be under control. I took like the most conservative view I could take, and I literally did a lot of work around the science of it, and basically my forecast was this is going to be a 3-year affair at the very least, and it's going to be ups and downs, and so taking those two things into consideration, right, were very critical, because the amount of effort to so-called pivot, to invest into entire product, we basically told the whole company, drop everything. This is the one thing we're doing. And that's 250 people at a time. So I think it's quite challenging, right, to mobilize all these people into a singular focus like this, and betting so much on it if there is not a clear sense of where we're heading. And we did a lot of work to share with people our view of it, our perspective, this forecast, these ups and downs. And half the company didn't understand it. Like they couldn't make sense of it. Oh, as you know, it's not easy to make sense of it. Over time, they started to realize, oh yeah, Wai Hong's right. There's up and downs that's happening. But the truth is that at that time, in order to make a move like this, the two key things was you really needed to understand how big the problem was, the pain they're trying to solve, and where was the future going. I think for many entrepreneurs, we don't necessarily do the second part as well. I think the first part comes fairly naturally. I think feeling the pain and problem is okay for most people, but that forecasting bit, they're getting a sense of where the future is heading. That's not something that comes naturally for a lot of us, and it's something that is really important in understanding pivot. I think a lot of businesses pivoted during COVID. A lot of businesses just did something that's E, they put an E in front of whatever they're doing, right? They don't necessarily consider where was the future going? Where was the future of the world heading? Come up with a thesis for that and then structure your innovation around that. I think very few companies did that. So a lot of my friends who did not do that, I remember speaking to Jasmine, right? And she was super optimistic. And I was like, no, Jazz, you need to think about this differently. You need to understand that it's not going to go back to normal. Like, so how do you plan for that? Plan for that. Don't plan for the optimistic future that a lot of people are succumbing to. No. And the reason why they do that is because they were like, if it doesn't pan out the way that their optimism is leading them to, they believe that their business will shut down. They believe that there's no business anymore. So that's why they don't plan for the worst alternative. But the truth is you have to confront that worst reality. So I think that's the secret to your pivot, I guess.
Yeah, definitely, wise words over there. We do see a lot of companies pivoting. Like you say, some just put E in front, but then to be a bit more strategic, about the direction, and don't lose focus as well, because the fear might make you lose a bit of focus. I remember I tried to book a hotel with Sunway, and actually they shut down the hotel to do renovation. And I find that to be extremely focused, not scared of COVID. Or maybe I quickly pivot and sell, I don't know, bubble tea online. But Sunway's not going to lose focus. We're going to say, you know what, we're going to get through this. How much money do we have in the bank? I think we're okay. Then we shut down the hotel. Don't make money now, but we're just going to what? So I think depending on the company, how you should pivot, really like Wai Hong say, look at your strategy in the front and all that, right?
Yeah.
Can I ask? Oh, sorry,
yeah, go ahead. I was just going to add.
No, please.
Wai Hong, you had an interesting thing. I think, as you said, many people thought it would end quickly, but then very interestingly, even in the beginning of the pandemic, Google said that they weren't going to open their offices until sometime in 2021. And this was in early 2020. And I was like, see, Google's already done the simulations. And that's where the numbers are actually going to listen. Yeah, they're not telling people, they just worked it out. But even their forecast was wrong. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
How should we look at the big, maybe you can call them traditional companies that are strong? I mentioned Sunway, anyone else, right? Maybe Hamzah, you can give us a point of view that how should we learn from them on this? Because they've been through difficult times, right? Some countries have been around for centuries, been through war, been through Great Depression, all that stuff. Anything that we can glean from those companies?
I'm trying to think of it from my investor's point of view, right? So, I mean, if you read stuff like what the Quarks did with C or C or Garena, and then they came in early. So I think most tycoons or most families are starting to realize, either because of COVID or even prior to that need to reinvent themselves, whether it's a small dip into venture or tech, whether it's investing in a fund, whether it's starting your own CVC, right? So I think the trend is definitely there because they have no choice. And a reason also why a lot of these conglomerates have survived this long, whether it's your YTL, your Sunway, is because you have different businesses that will do well at different times of their life cycle. And also you have cash flow businesses that continue to churn out either monopolistic or duopolistic type profits that sustain the business. But all in all, I think the ability to kind of adapt and change, whether it's to governments, to the politics, to the economy, is I think what differentiates them from the rest. And if you survive for 100 years, you probably have done something right? So I know a lot of people just focus on, hey, is it like crony capitalism or anything along those lines? But actually, it's just adjusting to the times, and I think these guys have done it very well.
Yeah, definitely agree. I think, well, sometimes when I see with the tycoons, don't look at startup, don't learn from them. You must learn from my company. And, you know, different points of view over there, and it's all very interesting. But thanks for that, Hamzah. I think we can learn from the big companies as well. Can I ask this question from the audience? How do I know which investor is right for me? What should I be looking at to select the right one? It's open to the floor. Anybody can take it. If not, I'll just volunteer one of you guys.
I'll just continue since I've really been talking. I think meeting an investor is like building a relationship, right? So there is no 100% right answer to building a relationship, and you can never be 100% sure that that person, that guy or girl is right for you. And then you just gotta think that it ticks the right boxes on both sides, and you go for it, right? So I think it's like that on the company side, it's also like that on the investor side. So I think being realistic on the relationship and working on the relationship is important, and that's how you have a happy marriage.
Yeah. I'll just add to that. I think, look at what stage you're in. So, usually in investors will say what stage they invest. That's a good filter. And then sometimes the investors will also say what sectors they invest in, and that you can filter, the ones that, having said all that, then you have a list on your spreadsheet of who to approach. But then look at all the soft nuances. Did you go to same school? Did you grow up in the same town? Do you have some common friends? You got to build those linkages, because it is about connection at the same time.
Firstly, the fact that you're asking the questions, which one do I select, means you're in good shape already. I think, many people don't have choice. I remember some of the early fundraising rounds, dude, it's not like I didn't have a selection of investors. I like the one guy who was willing to give me money, and then the rest who didn't, right? And I think so you're in good shape if you're asking that question, like which is the right person. It's like I think Hamzah used the word relationships. I like to use the analogy of dating. It's like dating. It's some people are real studs, and they have like a whole selection of people, and some people are, they just don't, right? And on the other hand, and in the startup ecosystem, that's whether you're in the trending industries or not, right? That's essentially the same equivalent metaphor. So I would say it's a little bit like dating, right? You gotta meet people. I think most of us will fall in that category. We have to meet hundreds of people before we find someone that we really like, because then you have a reference point, right? You understand the differences between people. You understand what you like, you don't like in those conversations. You understand what works and what doesn't work with you. Of course, there are the few lucky people who meet one person and then fall in love, and they get married and they live happily ever after. There are always those exceptions, but for the majority of us, it's not going to be the case. So I think the volume of people that we meet is going to be super important. I think on paper, it's important to kind of rank your investors. It's important to kind of like say, okay, understand them, put your research down on that spreadsheet to understand, okay, this investor is in what sector, so on and so forth. But then to actually then do those meetings, I would always caution people to not do your A investors first, meaning don't meet the what do you call it, the Sequoias and the big names of the world that you really, really want on your cap table. Don't meet those guys first, right? Always meet the guys on the bottom of your list first, because you're never going to do your best presentation, your best conversations at the start of that journey. Fundraising is a skill. Dating to a certain degree is a skill, right? Learning to groom yourself, learning to present yourself well, learning to have good conversation, all those are skills. So you got to think of it as a process of honing your skills, and eventually you would find that through that process of meeting a lot of people, you get a sense of, okay, this person, I really like the fact that this investor, for example, gives me feedback that is not just, stringing me along and then hoping to get into my round when a real investor steps in. They actually demonstrated to me. And this was something that I valued a lot. I remember some of the early stage investors that gave me a lot of feedback were not necessarily the big name ones. They were just really good, humble investors that were willing to write me 10-paragraph long emails explaining to me exactly what was wrong with my model, what was good about my model. And I really valued that. Some of them never invested in a business event, but they become good friends. They constantly introduce more investors to me. And that's the kind of process I think it's more valuable than simply the selection criteria. I think it's important to recognize what are the kind of traits in investors that you really value. And oftentimes they're not too different from traits in people that you value. And that's generally the genuineness, the honesty, upfrontness. Of course, that's my perspective on it. I know some people just, as long as the investors got money, I manage to sell it to them, I'll take that money. As long as they're a big name, we won't take their money. But it would be up to you to decide what kind of marriage partner you want in your life.
Right. Yeah, I do agree with that. There are investors that we do maybe don't take their investment because of a fit or something like that, right? And you don't always have to say yes to money. I think smart money is probably better than any money, right? But speaking about a relationship, Hamzah, you talked about that, and I do think that's very important. For a relationship between the VC and the company and the founders and the team and all that, and to think of it as a relationship. How do you build that now during virtual times? Any ways of doing it now? Do you send a cake to someone's house, or like how do you deal with it in these times?
I agree from how I deal with my investors or potential investors. I think you gotta get their mind share, at the same time don't be annoying, right? So what I do personally to get mind share is that I think highlight some of the success stories that's been doing well, whether it's articles, whether it's kind of portfolio updates. I think once in a while, like celebrations that you see, like now it's something like moon cakes all around. So here and there, you do send something. It's not something. It's just more like a gesture rather than anything super meaningful. But I think that's how you build relationships in general over time, right? Like I think if there's a mutually beneficial relationship, whether it's an investor, as a friend, or whatever, that's how you grow relationships over time. So that's how I do it. I don't think there's an exact science to it. Some people do it extremely well, some people do it less well, but in the end, it's how you build relationships.
Yeah. Shahril, what about you? You sit very far away from the rest of Southeast Asia, and you have to manage Khazanah Americas all the way there, and then your parent company in KL at that point. You have told me little bits of what you do to manage your relationship, and I thought it was really well managed. This was years ago. Maybe you can share some tips over there.
Yeah, I think constant contact. I think that's really important. I think creating an environment where you can have honest communication. I think that's key. And I think in building relationships, both for fun with your investors and also with your startups, you have to get into a habit of raising hard questions and sharing sharing in the answers, and also seeing how you brainstorm together. But I think honest communication is key. And then in terms of your team, I think one of the things you would look for in startups also is how they manage their teams, how the cap table looks in terms of the key founding members, the dynamics between the different founders during the meeting. I think these are very soft cues, but you want to see that this team is resilient, because the road is bumpy, and you want to know that they can work together. I mean, I've been in some meetings where the co-founders or the three co-founders are cutting each other off to talk, and you could see that maybe the dynamic wasn't the best, and but business plan looked great, but then you think, well, maybe we got to dive deeper into this team. Chemistry is important.
Right. Yes, definitely. It all comes from people, right? Everything comes from people. We're all people. Yeah. Anybody else have anything to add on how to manage relationships online? maybe post more on LinkedIn or something.
Virtual coffee, virtual tea sessions. I've done all of them, and it's actually quite good.
Yeah. Look at build your terrarium next week, and all kinds of employee engagement stuff going on now because it's virtual, right?
Yes.
And we have to keep the spirits up and take care of our team as well. So Dave Chu here have a question. And I think we can also address perhaps his concern here. If we can do that, would be great. And if there is a cause for concern, maybe there isn't, but at least we addressed it. We often hear local investors here hoping to find the next unicorn to recycle their capital of talent into the ecosystem, but many still prefer to place on safer bets and not really bold or early ideas. Would it change over time? What do you guys think? Is that the case? And if not, what's your point of view? And if that's the case, then would it change over time?
I'll take a snap at it first. I think when you ask about local capital, I think now like capital is fungible, right? So I think capital can be regional, capital can be local, capital can be anywhere already. Like let's say Shahril can invest from the US and look at companies here. So I think from that perspective, you should be as open as possible to
Sorry, it's not muted.
Yeah. So you can access capital from anywhere, and I think it's up to you. I think from a local investor's perspective, I think what I would say with Malaysian startups is getting more. I think there's more guys wanting to come into our space, and there's more investors coming to our space. So at least I think for smaller rounds, you obviously can get with the local guys. I think once it gets bigger, then the regional guys have to come in. And I think there's a matter of the amount of capital available to startups here, and also because there's a gap in kind of later stages where prior to all the sovereign wealth funds coming in, there's a gap where who can do like $20 to $30 million checks. Actually, there's no one that can do that here locally.
Yeah, I think if the question is betting on safe bets and incumbents versus startups with bold ideas, I think you'll always find investors willing to back the bold ideas if you can show your growth numbers and how fast you're growing. Let's say every month you're growing at 100%, or every quarter at 100%. Even though you might be small, this is actually interesting. It's significant, and so I think if you have a bold idea, you need to back it up with some form of attraction in the market, and then you'll find investors willing to bet on this.
Okay.
So I have a slightly different take on this. And my perspective is that it's a two-sided thing, right? Like investing is effectively a marketplace. You have a willing buyer, you have a willing seller. The challenge, of course, in an early stage ecosystem like Malaysia, Southeast Asia, is that your willing buyers and willing sellers are also very early stage, meaning they are very immature, they're young, you don't have a lot of experienced investors, neither do you have a lot of experienced entrepreneurs, right? Especially tech entrepreneurs. Unlike the Valley, where you had decades of that ecosystem developing to the point where it's able to bet big on ideas, to the point where you have founders who had founders mentoring people. It's a very different ecosystem. So when we look to a place like a Valley where you have this idea that someone with an idea can simply get millions of dollars, versus here where you generally don't see that happen, it's not to say it's because it's an investor's fault. It's not to say it's because it's the entrepreneur's fault. It's almost always both. You almost always have an investor who has not seen a lot of this, really good big ideas translate into anything meaningful. You also don't have a lot of entrepreneurs who are very good at selling big ideas or proving big ideas can actually work in a region like this. You have the market factor. It's a lot more difficult to scale in multiple countries with disparate cultures here in Southeast Asia than it is to a singular big market in the US. You have all these factors playing into the reasoning of why you don't see bets on big ideas here. Would that change? I think, there's another question I read just below that question about me being a first-time founder. And I would say that, yes, it will change, but it takes time. In fact, I reflect on my own journey as a first-time founder, and I realized that my ability to fundraise has improved, right? Every single time I do it, I've gotten better at it. And that has come through, people teaching me how fundraising even works. I remember doing the Magic E at Stanford program, turning up in the Valley, and a VC for the first time ever telling me, we actually have investors that we look to, and there's the reason why we have to do these outsized returns. All of that was a journey for me to learn to be better at playing this game of fundraising, right? And it's a game. It's a game you have to learn to get better. It's a game you have to understand the rules better. You have to understand the pieces better. It's all of that is a learning process. So I guess the core question, would it be eventually, will we see investors bet on big ideas? And I say yes, eventually we will, but it would require an entire ecosystem being generous. I love the fact people like Shahril, ex-rocket engineer working at NASA, sharing in this ecosystem. But we need more of this, right? We need people who are willing to share. I remember in my early days of being in Malaysia, I always feel like the ecosystem of startup was such a Kung Fu master mindset, right? Like they were always, I don't tell you my secret power until I die. Then only I reveal it. It was very like, it was very much like that. I remember one of my favorite mentors, the late Nazrin Hassan, was one of the few people, right, who was willing to share so openly. And I think part of the reason why we do all this and part of the reason why I enjoy these things is because when people are willing to share, I think, it's really a wonder. And eventually we will get there. Yeah. Just, it will take time.
I think that change will keep happening with cohorts of entrepreneurs who become successful, and as their companies grow, they spin off new entrepreneurs that that can achieve bolder and bolder ideas. Yeah, but the time is getting shorter, I think. So that's a good thing. The time between it's accelerating. So that's good.
Yeah, sorry, go on. Shahril, you wanna?
No. I think the time for bold ideas. I think maybe one last thing is I would like to use this pond scum analogy. You go to a pond and there is this little bit of algae on the pond, and you think, this is no big deal. Next day it doubles in size. No big deal. Next day it doubles in size. So now it's maybe, it's reaching like an eighth of the pond, and you say, this is still no problem. Next thing you know, it's a quarter of the pond, and 2 days later, it's half of the pond. And the next day later, it covers the pond, and you say, what the hell happened? And that's what startups can do to incumbents. They're thought of insignificant, and then because they grow very fast, if they've got, traction, or they're creating a product that's needed. And the pandemic is actually a great time to build certain kinds of companies for that.
Yeah, definitely. There are some overnight successes and stuff like that. And I mean, I think the concern from this person asking is that maybe in Malaysia we are a little bit more conservative, and we do have to face up to the fact that is the case. And how do companies that have these crazy ideas thrive over here instead of maybe be poached to some other place or something like that? And maybe also the capital influx we're not like US is capital markets are very strong, so they can support a lot of that. And how do we bring that capital in order to I used to have I used to live on Sand Hill Road actually, and yes, you go and buy Starbucks also can hear a lot of things and a lot of different things, right?
Every cafe.
Yeah, every cafe, right? And then, you come back from your house and take your meal, also can hear a lot of different things, right? But then here, when you go and buy Starbucks, it's not the same, right? And it has to support the environment around as well. For a reason, maybe capital influx is not so big, and so you cannot take that much risk as well. So you might have to, for that user, also maybe respect the pond that you're in and do something else less risky. And then later when you have a name, then you can do something bigger.
Maybe I'll just add one more thing, Stephanie. I mean, like WORQ, having a community is great. I think, for entrepreneurs to be able to meet one another and share crazy ideas with one another. I think the sharing is key. If you don't share, you can't test out your ideas and learn from one another. And I think so. If you have a crazy idea, surround yourself with other crazy people in a place like WORQ or other places or virtually online, so that you can develop it further. Because maybe it's not so crazy after all.
Yeah. If people support it, like Tesla and all that.
Yeah, I'm going to
It's
build
a
an
lot.
electric car.
Yeah.
I'm going to build a rocket company.
That's right. It's just depending on who tells you what around you as well. I think we are the last 5 minutes. There's a question here from Sunny Singh. I think we can take maybe 2 more. So let me know if you want to answer this one. He's had 30 pitches already with VCs. If I've already pitched to 30 VCs, he said 3 to 4 said they don't want to invest in this round, and others are still have not said anything concrete. I'm already sending monthly updates for 3 months, but not much responses. What should I do? Relook at my pitch, my business model, keep following up? What should they do? Or add more VCs to his list? Anything that we can tell Sunny to help?
Maybe I would suggest, reach out to, the VCs you have, the ones who are most responsive, or some of the others you haven't, and try to really get feedback from them. It's okay to say no, but ask them, why maybe, you're not fond of my idea or fond of what I'm building. I think that feedback will help you tune it or think of how to change the business.
I would say only 30 VCs. My list was 200 long when I was doing early-stage fundraising. And I remember doing hundreds of pitches. And I think the one thing I would say is this: look, I don't know too much about the context, but what it seems to me is that you're pitching for the intention of raising money exclusively in what you've described. What I think you should probably consider, and because it seems like you're not sure, right? You're relooking your pitch deck, your business model, you're not sure if that's the right thing to do. And that sounds like a lack of feedback. And so what I suggest is what Shahril was just saying, like, the next time you're pitching to, I guess, more than 30 VCs, I mean, I suggest at least 100, is to make sure that you don't just pitch. Ask a lot of questions. I think one thing I noticed a lot about startups, especially young entrepreneurs, is that they think of pitches as them presenting to a VC, and then the VC asking them a million questions, and that's it. That's a wrong mindset, right? It's like imagine going on a date and one person talks and one person asks questions and that's it. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. What you need to do is that every single time you're in a pitch, prepare questions. Do your homework about the VC. Ask them questions about their portfolio companies. Ask them questions about their investors, about the industries they invested in. Ask them questions about your business. The VCs will respect you more if you ask questions, but oftentimes entrepreneurs don't ask questions and they don't do homework before they meet VCs. And that is the truth. It's a skill, right? It's a skill. It's a very simple skill of doing homework before you meet a VC, and then knowing how to ask good questions so you get feedback. From there, I think it will answer what the question that you're asking here, whether you should be relooking at your pitch, you should be looking at your business model. Always ask the question, why, what's wrong with my business model? You can simply ask that question to the VC. It's not as simple as that. And then if they don't want to tell you a good answer, that's fine. If they give you details, and oftentimes they will, it's also good. So I think that's an important piece that seems to be missing in your approach.
Yeah, great.
I'll just add, once you have even those 30 investors, and I agree, Hong should be way more than that. I think you just got to be just ask for a decision and ask for feedback. If they don't want to invest, it's okay. Most will say no anyway, but I think if you can get some feedback from those who say no, and also get a decision of a yes or no, because sometimes they ask for updates and all, but they may not want to invest. So I think it's just good to get a clear yes or no, and then you can also move on, right?
Right. Okay.
I think you can also ask, what's your process? I think that's a nice direct question also to the VC, because you're able to ascertain how long it would take for them to respond. If they're kind of what's their process? Do they do diligence? So you learn a little bit more about how they look at you.
Yeah. Okay. So to sort of give an example to Sunny's question just now, one of the people on the floor asked this, and I think it's a nice little case study for you, Sunny. It's a question on work, so then I can give you some case study, and then I think we can round this talk out. which is they ask, okay, Stephanie and WORQ, you raise funds during COVID as well, and post WeWork a debacle as well as your company is an asset-heavy model, which might make fundraising difficult. So how did you manage to raise funds during the pandemic? So like Sunny, you met many investors, right? How and then they said no. So how did we do that as well? So I think one thing to you, Sunny Singh, is that maybe, and I'm just guessing from what you're saying, reading between, is that the business model needs to be very sound and very good, right? So case study wise for us, why would people invest in us even though it's asset heavy as well as during pandemic, post-week and all that? Is because if you see real estate as an industry, it being also a financial instrument and very huge as a significant part of the economy, has not been innovated for a long time. And that industry is very big. And when the investor looks at our model, it's like, this industry is huge. If you get the model right, and you can do this for every single building in this country alone, you'll be very rich. Because think of the amount of real estate that's being invested, and then other countries as well. And nothing has come out of it at the moment. And on top of that, our model is like a SaaS model, but it's physical. So software as a service, space as a service. Once you have a lot of people onboarded to this platform, you can start selling them a lot of things. It's like Amazon Web Services, but physical. And why is physical good? Because digital is also very competitive. For every digital, there's thousands of others as well. So the online to offline, the online people may have to work with us for the offline. So with this kind of business model, the investors see actually it is huge and it can work. And it's already profitable. That means you have something that works and that can keep replicating. And replicating is easy. Once you have something that works, just keep replicating. Then you can make money after money after money on every single outlet, and we're not just doing outlet, it's whoever is using our space, or our service. Sometimes they don't even come to our space, you make money out of that. So you just maybe have to look sometimes at the business model, and then maybe talk to people with market, like investment bankers, where they know how to see, then they can give you tips. So that's why getting advice, like Wai Hong is saying, as well as leveraging out of an ecosystem of people with different points of view to help you come up with that model is very important. Because if that model can make money, then people will invest in you, right? So I think if anybody else have anything else to say to Sunny or anyone else here, I would appreciate it. If not, then we can take leave and thank the people on the floor as well for coming and asking all those great questions. And hopefully we have helped them with their fundraising ability, and also open up a whole point of view for them on how to manage things after this. Anyone else would like to say something to our wonderful viewers?
I'll just say, don't give up the hope. And I think you'll find different venture capital people and different investors will approach you differently. So just keep going at it and refining your story.
Awesome. Wai Hong, any last words of advice as well as Hamzah?
I think Shahril summed it up really nicely. It's really a numbers game for most of us. Most of us are not born with the innate ability to fundraise or sell, and we have to actually meet many people. And I think when you find good investors, you will feel it, right? You will know it. And at the same time, you have to be better yourself. So I think the key that I was describing earlier is that you have to see this as a journey, as a process of, it's a skill. As a skill, I think that's the key, right? It's a skill. How do you get better at this? And oftentimes you get better by reflection, by introspection, by asking for honest, genuine feedback, by learning to ask good questions. I think these are very important skills that I oftentimes don't see, in an early ecosystem like Malaysia.
Last words, Hamzah, for advice for the people.
Yeah, I would just say, to everyone, just fight on, right? The journey is tough. I think for everyone, whether it's companies, whether it's startups, it's always tough. Just to find the best way out of it and just hustle on. I think that's the best advice I can give.
Great words there, wisdom, hustle on. From Hamzah, he's seen a lot of companies as well, and I think he really knows a thing or two. Our attendees here want to say thank you to all you guys, Wai Hong, Shahril, Hamzah as well. Sunny said, thanks a lot for your input, guys. Really appreciate it. Daryl Wong says, very informative. Thank you. Those are some of the examples. So I feel like you really made a difference, you guys here. I had a great time. You know, the people on the floor seem to have learned a lot from you. So you've really given genuine answers. And, you know, we at work are really grateful for that, that you've given your afternoon here. So thank you so much. Thanks, Wai Hong. Thanks, Hamzah. Hope to see you guys around. And,
Thank
you know,
you.
all the best and take care.
Thank
Yep.
you. Thank you.
Thank
See
you.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for
Bye.
organizing. Bye.
Yes, no problem. See you, Shahril.
Bye. Yeah.
Bye.